In Ezra chapter 6, the temple is completed, it's dedicated, and the Passover is restored. But guess who's absent? God is. As a matter of fact, in 1 Samuel and in Ezekiel, it tells us of a prophecy and how it is fulfilled about God's glory departing. And this is really important because it's got something that'll just give you goosebumps. It did me when I first read it. In 1 Samuel 4, verses 21 and 22, it says this. And she named her child Ichabod. You ever wonder what Ichabod means? It means the glory of God has departed. The glory of God has departed. Because the ark of God was taken and because the father-in-law and her husband, and she said, the glory of God has departed from Israel, for the ark of God is taken. You understand, the ark of God kind of represented the glory of God. And when the ark was taken, God left. In Ezekiel chapters 8, 9, 10, and 11, it talks about the departure of the glory of God. And in chapter 10, in verse 18 and 19 in Ezekiel, it says this, and the glory of the Lord departed from off the threshing floor of the house and stood over the cherubims. So this cherubim showed up to escort the glory of God out. He's having this vision. And the cherubs lifted their wings and mounted up from the earth in my sight, and they went out. The wheels also were beside them, and everyone stood at the door of the east gate. Anybody got any idea what the east gate is? The east gate of the temple. You know there's only one gate to the temple that stands today. Guess what gate it is? It's the eastern gate. Guess where God's glory is? It's at the eastern gate waiting. And what's the prophecy? It says when Jesus comes back, he'll step down upon earth on the Mount of Olives, and he'll walk back through the eastern gate to the Temple Mount. And guess what he will bring back with him? The glory of God when he comes. The glory of God is waiting at the east gate for the Messiah to come back through it. It's the only gate to the temple that remains. So you think Jesus is not talking to her about something important? Jesus knew that the glory was standing there at the eastern gate. He probably even passed through that gate knowing that one day he would come back and bring the glory of God back to the Temple Mount, but it wasn't time yet. As a matter of fact, when this event takes place, when he goes to Sychar and meets this woman at the well, Jesus has just left the Temple Mount for the first time that he had visited as the Messiah. He'd gone to the Temple Mount after his baptism by John and ministered there for a while, and the first thing he did was cleanse the temple. He cleansed the temple. Why would he do that? Because it was full of the filth from 500 years of pollution since the time Ezra had rebuilt it. The priesthood had gone bad again. They had a corrupt sacrificial system. They were controlling the worship, and they were not supposed to. They should have just been controlling the sacrificial system. When we get to the well in Sychar, Jesus had walked up there from Jerusalem itself. He just left Judea from this first visit. And he walks to where the woman at the well is, and he has this conversation with her about why is it we can't worship here? And he says, that's not the way it's supposed to be. That's why. It's not the way it's supposed to be. In the New Testament, Jesus tells us, and I read the verse to you in chapter 4 and verse 23, even though he's saying to her, you must continually believe me, woman, that the hour comes when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem shall you come to worship the Father. That hour was already there. He says in verse 23, the hour come and now is. Why is that away? Because the Shekiinah glory of God had left. The tabernacle of the Old Testament time was over with. Jesus is 30 years old. In 70, we'll just say it's 30 AD. In 70 AD, that temple was destroyed, never to be rebuilt. Never to be rebuilt. Because the sacrificial system is over with. The Jews may try to reinstitute it if they ever get a chance. But you understand that system is over with because the sacrifice came. Now, how do we know that? 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 1 says, for we know that if our earthly house of this tabernacle were dissolved, we have a building of God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. So where's the tabernacle now? It's right here. Yes. It's in you and me. So where's the glory of God supposed to dwell? Right here, in you and me. Boy, think of all the stuff we do to pollute that. Oh. Think of all the stuff we do wrong that keeps God from shining through us. Hebrews 9:11 says, but Christ, being come a high priest of good things to come, by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building. And they were standing there in front of it looking at it. He said, it's not the temple anymore, it's the one not made with hands. We're not made with hands. Now, in the book of Revelation, it gives two verses that are important. Revelation 3:12, at the end of the chapter of the letters to the churches, he says, to him that overcomes, I'll make you a pillar in my temple. You and I have to be overcomers. If we are overcomers, we become pillars in the temple of God. And he will go no more in and out, and I will write upon him the names of my God, the names of the city, which is the New Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven from my God, and I will write upon him my new name. What's he telling us? He's telling us that as the temple of God, we're going to have God's writing in us, on us. We're going to become the pillars of his new foundation, new way of worship. And then finally in John chapter 21, it says, and I saw a holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven. So where's the temple going to come from? It's going to come from God out of heaven. In chapter 21 of the book of Revelation, 21:2. So why is Jesus telling this woman that system is gone? Because it is. He said it's been gone for a long time. It's been gone since Solomon's temple was destroyed in 586.
What was that scripture in Revelation
21:2, where the New Jerusalem comes down out of heaven? She said, this is the way things were. And Jesus says, I want to show you a new way, a better way to worship me. And of course, the conversation that follows in verses 22, 23, 24, 25, he defines better that new way. But do you understand? He's laid the foundation historically for it never being that way ever again. The sacrificial system is gone. I'm the sacrifice. He's not saying that to her yet, but later on he's going to say to her, she knows, she's going to say to him, I know that the Messiah is coming, and Jesus is going to say, He who speaks to you is he. What's he really saying? He said, I'm the Messiah. He never says it more plainly anywhere in the New Testament. She's saying, why can't we do sacrifice? He's saying, I'm the sacrifice. He's given this woman insight he has given to nobody else. You understand that? This woman who's been married 5 times and living with a 6th and turns her life totally around. She becomes what we should be, the glory of God, as a witness in the city. Destiny is fulfilled in her that day. Because right after Jesus says to her, I'm the sacrifice, she takes off to the city, and the disciples come back. She takes off with a light shining in her that's not going to go out. And folks, that's what we need. We need to reclaim the light in us. Interestingly, when we get saved, some people's salvation and reclamation goes hand in hand. But some people's salvation and reclamation is separated by years. Sometimes a few, sometimes many. But it's the reclamation that we need to understand. We need to reclaim what God designed us for. That's to hold His glory, so that His glory can shine through us. Not be ours, but shine through us in a world that's dying in darkness, dying in sin. We need to be that light.